The desired outcome of any pregnancy is delivery of a healthy, bouncing baby or bundle of joy, as some say. So babies enter this world in one of two ways, either through normal vaginal delivery or a surgical delivery by cesarean section, often known as a C-section. This is a surgical procedure that became popular as early as the 20th century and was then only performed if the mother was at risk of dying before her baby was born. Its popularity has continued to rise, so much so that South Africa has the highest C-section rate in the world. So today we reflect on the cesarean section delivery. We will learn about when the procedure is indicated, whether or not there are any alternatives, whether or not there's any risk associated with the procedure, why the rate is so high, and most importantly, examine ways in which this high rate can be brought down to more acceptable levels. So get yourself warm with a cup of tea, coffee, or soup, whatever. Sit back, relax, and learn from this exciting show ahead. And for any questions on this topic, please call us on Johannesburg 714-6843, 6847, 6857, or interact with us on our Facebook page, SABC Health Talk, and on Twitter at SABC Health Talk, including our email address, of course, healthtalk@sabc.co.za. I'm Dr. Sello Mutaung, and this is Health Talk.
Africa has among the highest rates of cesarean section deliveries in the world. More than 2 in 3 South African mothers in private hospital give birth by cesarean section or C-section.
Cesarean section is another option in the mode of delivering. Patients come and they wish to do normal vaginal deliveries, and occasionally we end up doing cesarean sections as well. Cesarean section in real terms is where we do it's a surgical incision on the mother's abdomen and into the uterus to enable us to deliver the baby.
There are a host of reasons for a cesarean section.
With my first pregnancy, the doctor he thought it was best for me to have a C-section. He felt that I had quite a small frame, and it would be very painful. And I also suffer from a bit of anxiety, and he just felt that it would put stress on the baby and it would put stress on me, and that's why he did a C-section.
What happens before C-section?
When mummies are admitted into hospital, they get seen by an anaesthetist that will discuss the options for anaesthetic, which is the safest for them. They will then get taken to theatre. They will be accompanied by a midwife. Once they're in theatre, they will have a dripping put up. The anaesthetist will then commence the anaesthetic, that of choice for mummy. The midwife will then put in a catheter for mummy once she's now numb waist down below. Then the scrub sister will then, that is now assisting the surgeon to do the procedure, will then clean mummy's tummy with a sterile solution. And she will apply some drapes over mummy just to create a nice sterile environment for the surgeons to actually work on. The midwife will be there for support and care for mummy. Daddy will also be present in theatre, so he is not going to be missing out on the opportunity as well. Once mummy is now numb and the anaesthetic has not taken effect, then the surgeon will continue with the procedure. And the midwife will be there together with the pediatrician to actually receive baby from the C-section. And then baby will then be taken care of, gets put onto mummy's chest for initial bonding. They'll do the initial assessment onto baby, wrap baby up nice and warmly, and get given back to mummy to take care of and hold throughout the procedure.
If a cesarean section is not a necessity, is opting for the procedure a wise choice?
I think it's a woman's choice to decide whether she wants to have a normal delivery or a C-section, and I think that decision is to be made together with her doctor. They need to iron out if there's any risk factors for a normal delivery, or if there's an uncomplicated pregnancy, then there's no reason why she shouldn't go through a normal delivery. But if there are some risk factors involved, and the pediatrician and the obstetrician feels that it is safer for baby to have a C-section, then that would be the option or the choice of delivery.
Falling pregnant can be one of the most amazing experiences a woman has the privilege of living through. Unfortunately, it can also be one of the most expensive and complication can arise.
There's always complications with any surgical procedure. There are complications. With our cesarean sections, there is more bleeding, you're more prone to infection, there is possible trauma to the bowel and bladder that could occur. There are risks of thrombosis and of embolus occurring as well. The cost is most probably a little bit more expensive in the fact that, number one, you have an extra day in hospital. There's a need for an anaesthetist to be available. There's a need for an assistant to be available. The use of epidurals or spinal blocks, certain things, there are cost implications to that as well. And then we have to be, it depends on the patient, how they recover and how they go forward in their postnatal period.
While South Africa's rate is significantly lower in public sector hospitals, a growing middle class who can afford to go private are increasingly taking the option.
My C-section experience went so well that next month I'm actually back for another C-section. I'm expecting my second baby boy, and I'm actually looking forward to my whole experience.
All right, so C-section rates, should I say, in South Africa have been described as recklessly high. When is a C-section indicated? Why are so many pregnant females opting for the C-section route? Well, let's understand this from our guests. We have three esteemed guests. First is Dr. Gilbert Anete, who's a gynecologist in private practice, but also head of Tambo Memorial Hospital. Welcome to Health Talk. And next to him, we have Dr. Carla van Benneke, who's a senior medical advisor within the health policy unit in MedScheme. Welcome to Health Talk, Carla. And of course, last but not least, Dr. Chililo Mashamba, a specialist gynecologist also from the Department of Health. Welcome to Health Talk, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Perhaps let's start with you, Dr. Anete. What is the C-section in simple terms?
C-section is an operation performed to deliver the unborn baby through opening the abdomen and then opening the womb of the mother.
Just out of interest, by the way, cesarean. Does it have anything to do with Julius Caesar?
Well, that's what the story goes, but I'm not very sure. I must be honest. But it is said that he has to be delivered by Caesar. Yeah, his mother has to be cut. Yeah. And he delivered to the sections. But that's how the story goes. But I'm not very sure.
All right. Dr. Mashamba, it is said that in the past, this was only done if, let's say, the mother was at risk of dying before the baby is born, and the only way to save the baby was to then cut the mother, as it were. When is this procedure indicated currently?
There are several indications for cesarean section.
Right.
Primarily, if the mother's life is in danger. I'll give the examples, but whenever the mother's life is in danger,
right,
and when the fetal life is also in danger.
Yeah.
For the mother, we have indications like, firstly, if a patient is a previous cesarean section, twice or more, that becomes an indication.
That's an important one. So if somebody has only had one previous cesarean section, it does not necessarily mean that the next one has to be a Caesar.
No, it doesn't have to be like that, depending on the size of the baby,
right,
and whether the baby is presenting with the head.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if somebody has had a previous Caesar before once and has had a subsequent child and falls pregnant the third time,
yes,
in that instance, what happens?
If the second baby was born vaginally,
correct,
normally, yes, she still has another chance of having a successful vaginal birth.
Normal vaginal delivery. Yes. Okay. Now, Dr. Anete, are there any alternatives? I mean, we're talking about the cesarean section. I mean, it's a surgical operation where, somebody has to go through anesthesia and gets cut and so on and so forth. We'll talk more about the procedure later. But are there alternatives to natural delivery, to delivery as such?
For the reasons we do cesarean sections, I don't think there are any alternatives.
Right.
Well, like my colleague rightly said, we perform cesarean section if vaginal delivery is detrimental to the health of the mother or the baby.
Right.
So if you are in a situation where you think the mother is at risk, or the baby is at risk, then there's no alternative than to do a cesarean section.
Right. Okay. Now, Dr. Van Beneke, cesarean section rates are, very, very high. South Africa is one of the highest in the world. Let's just try and understand, what are the rates like in the private sector?
As you said, the cesarean rates globally are rising, and generally all of them are more than the WHO target of 15%.
Right.
In South Africa, there's a difference between the public and the private sector.
Right.
In the public sector, the rate is about 18 to 20%,
right.
and in the private sector, it's 70%.
That's
so markedly different.
That's very high.
And compared to the rest of the world, for example, in America, the rate is about 30%.
Right.
In Australia, about 40%, and in the UK, about 20%. So you can see we're way off. Actually, but except Brazil and China are similar to us in the private sector. So those are ones that are similar to us. But generally, we, as you say, we're the highest in the world.
We're going to come back to why the rates are so high in the next segment, perhaps. But perhaps let's just put the question through to you, Dr. Mashamba. We've just heard that in the public sector, the rates are as low as 18%, perhaps closer to the WHO norm. And yet in the private sector, they up to, in fact, some hospitals in Cape Town, in fact, are known to have rates as high as 90%. Why is there such a difference between the public sector and the private sector?
Yeah, firstly, maybe just to clarify a little bit more, in that even in the levels of care, we have got the district hospitals, we have got the regional hospitals, and we have got tertiary hospitals.
Right.
Depending on where you are looking at, you will find that the 18% is more for the district hospitals.
Right.
Because if they get a complication, they invariably refer to a higher level of care.
Right.
And you find that the cesarean section for the higher levels of care is a bit higher.
Higher as to what sort of level?
Yeah, as indicated, in general in South Africa, the cesarean section rate is around 23%.
Okay.
But when you look at tertiary institutions or central hospitals, a paper published by Nathan last year had indicated that in central hospitals, the cesarean section rate is about 42%. And then in the regional, it's about 30%. And when you look at the district hospital, that's where it's 18%.
Right.
And the reason being that in the regional, in the district hospitals, they deal with low-risk patients. And that's why if they get a complication, they will refer that patient and it will be counted as a cesarean section in the higher level of care. So you find that the cesarean section rate at district hospital is lower.
So it's not like people are denied the C-section in the public sector?
No, not necessarily. In fact, the opposite is true. There are patients who would request a cesarean section, but in the public sector, we prioritize on who is in danger.
Right.
So if I have 4 patients, I will say this one is more urgent compared to the other one.
Yeah.
And in some instances, you find that while she's still waiting for a cesarean section, she might end up delivering, but the outcome is what might be worrying.
Okay.
Yes.
The other side of the coin in what you just said then is that in the public sector, cesarean sections are only performed when indicated. Yeah. So the difference between the public and the private sector is that if the private sector was only performing cesarean sections only if indicated, the rate would be as low as, or at least would be similar to that of the public sector. So in essence, we can therefore assume that the difference between the public sector and the private sector is really, if one could say it, unnecessary cesarean section. Do you agree with me?
No, I don't.
Let's find out.
I don't. You know what? Women have got choices.
Right.
Okay. Much as we will say you do cesarean section only for indicated situations, mothers have choices. Somebody might decide, I want to have a cesarean section instead of going through the normal vaginal delivery.
Should it be like that? The choice, now who makes the decision? Should the choice be made by the mother or by the doctor?
Well, if the mother opts for normal delivery, then you do the cesarean section if it's indicated. But if from the beginning the mother opts for a cesarean section for whatever social reason she has.
So essentially what you're saying is, if a mother decides that I want to have my baby by cesarean section when it's not indicated, because she's asked for it, she'll get it.
You counsel her and let her know the dangers of cesarean sections.
Okay, all right. We'll get back to that. We just need to go for a short commercial break. When we return, we try and understand the possible reason for this unacceptably high rate. Please stay with us.
The issue becomes on how you do what you want to do in effecting change. Change has to happen. There's no question about that.
African heroes who have not been feted, who do not have the statues and the memorials.
We misunderstood reconciliation to mean status quo should be preserved in some instances.
I was asking people who are managing Hector Peterson, they said to us, no, the person who's cleaning the area, an ordinary person, not even the curator, somebody who's cleaning, the area there, an ordinary person in the street will fight with you if you do anything wrong with those statues.
That's Rights and Recourse, Sundays 2 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. So does the higher rate of C-sections have anything to do with the notion that doctors want to work on Monday and go play golf on Friday? Or is it that perhaps women opt for this route based on some misperception? Well, let's get our experts to clarify us on this. Dr. Anyete, I'm still with you. You mentioned that the choice has to be, or at least in the instance where the mother opts for a cesarean section, yes, you say that, the mother gets counseled, but ultimately, of course, she gets the Caesar. Surely that cannot be right.
No, they don't get Caesars all the time when they opt for Caesars. I'm just give you a scenario. Because sometimes some of these mothers, when you counsel them properly, they understand they opt for vaginal delivery. Ultimately, vaginal delivery is the best form of delivery. But if the mother insists, for whatever reason, she wants a cesarean section, and you don't offer, and something happens, then you, the doctor, will be in trouble. So they have choices. So we have to counsel them and then yield to their choices. If she says she wants a cesarean section, then she gets a cesarean section.
Okay. I believe we have a caller on the line, Benson from the Eastern Cape. Good morning, Benson.
Yes, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good, how are you? The question, please.
Yes, please. It's not a question per se, it's just a comment.
Yeah.
Regarding the issue where there is a comparison between the high rate of Caesar in private sector versus the high rate of Caesar in public sector. My point of argument, therefore, is that there is the numbers of patients that turns up at private sector versus the number at public sector. I don't think it's a true reflection when you say it's 18% high at public sector compared to a 7% high. I don't think it's a fair or a balance in terms of, I don't think there's a balance in terms of patients that are turning up to those health sectors.
Interesting point. Let's get the experts to respond. Dr. Mashamba, is it a true reflection of the rates as we see them?
Yeah, firstly, you need to look at the profiles of patients who are attended to.
Yeah.
If you look at private sector, It looks at low risk, medium risk, and some few high risk. And therefore, it will not maybe support maybe the rate as high as it is. So you shouldn't just look at the number of patients. You need to look at what are the profiles of the patients that are attended to in the private sector.
Dr. van Brenneke?
I think the caller does have a point, because a lot of people will only join medical aid to access maternity benefits. So I think he's right. I think the figures can be a bit skewed. I'm speaking from the private sector point of view. So I do think that is a factor.
Yeah. Because oftentimes, they say that we don't compare apples with apples when we compare the public sector with the private sector, because in the public sector, it's just been outlined, it's truly indicated cesarean sections, whereas in the private sector, it's a combination, for lack of a better way of putting it, that, there are those that are indicated. However, over and above that, there are those that are done electively and, dare I say, unnecessarily. Your comment?
I wouldn't say they are done unnecessarily, because if you look at the outcomes of babies born in the public sector and then the outcomes of babies born in the private sector, you realize that there's decreased incidence of complications of the children in the private sector, because the private sector, the doctors act quickly enough.
Well, we can. Okay, maybe.
Yeah,
all right,
I mean, you know what? And because of medical legal implications as well.
Yeah.
So our threshold for Caesar is a bit lower, in the sense that if we see any indication that this baby is at risk, you'd rather go and deliver the baby than to wait and then the baby gets a poor outcome. Whereas in the government sector, because they have logistics, they have so many doctors around who can continuously monitor the baby, they could have the risk of waiting and see to the end. But in private sector, it's very difficult because of litigations. Let me put it that way.
Dr. Bashama, do you agree? I mean, okay, here's one. He's brought out two issues here. That there's the issue of litigation, that doctors face all the time. And on the other hand, there's issues of perhaps lack of resources within the public sector, and therefore that's why you have the rates as low as possible, where, for instance, doctors in the public sector can afford to wait a little bit and take that risk that the private sector wouldn't take, if I'm presenting it correctly. Do you agree with that?
Partly. It's just that in the public sector, you need to look at the load of the patients.
Yeah.
There's a high number of patients where you find that the labor wards are full. Patients laboring not even on the beds, but sitting on the chairs, waiting to be assessed. And if you look at that, with few, maybe when it comes to the resources, the issue of the availability of theatre, which I think plays a major role. I think throughout the country, that has been one of the major concerns, that we do not have easy access to theatre to perform cesarean sections. And therefore, resource-wise, I think that plays a major role. I had already indicated also that you have patients who might be waiting to go to theatre, they end up delivering vaginally, and that would have reduced the cesarean section rate.
Yeah, but his point about the fact that the high rate is often driven by the fear of litigation by the medical professionals. Your comment on that?
Yeah, litigation is both ways. It's not only in private, it's just that maybe in private it's more directed to the doctor.
Yeah.
While in the public, even if a doctor is implicated, is directed more to the Department of Health.
All right. We have another call on the line, Nomsa from Soweto. Good morning, Nomsa.
Morning, how are you?
Good, how are you, ma'am? Your question or comment?
Good. I'm good. It's an interesting show today. I would like to appreciate it, especially for us, the mothers. Right. I had an experience. I have my first child in public hospital.
Yeah.
And then my second child, I had a medical aid. And then it happened that on my 38 weeks, the doctor told me that the child is too big and he has to do the Caesar. I told him, but doctor, I don't want Caesar. I just want a normal birth. The doctor gave my fight back. He told me that I have to try another doctor because his decisions are respected by his patients. So I have to go somewhere else. I refused. I told the doctor that I just want natural birth, and that maybe, if in case of emergency, on my delivery, it happened that there are risks, and then it can't be Caesar. It's fine.
So what happened ultimately, Nomsa? Did you deliver naturally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank
So
you very
I
much.
think the problem is the medical aid.
Okay.
If you do have the medical aid in private hospital, they see the cow. The cow to be slaughtered.
Okay. Let's get a comment from them. Firstly, let's start with the medical aids. There's this notion that those that are on medical aid, because medical aids pay for these procedures, that's why the rate is so high. And the second part of the question I'd like to direct at you, Dr. Aneke, that it appears that some doctors try and bulldoze poor patients into having cesarean sections, at least according to what the scholar is saying. Let's start with you, Dr. van Bennek.
Well, the reality is that at the moment, there's very little that medical aids do to control the Caesar rate.
Right.
It's really it's the decision of the patient and the doctor. And in this case, it was the doctor that was pushing the Caesar, not the medical aid. I don't think it's a financially driven decision. I think from the doctor's point of view, as you were saying, it's fear of litigation. Right. It's the practice that they feel comfortable with. They're far less likely to be taken to task for not doing a Caesar than for doing a Caesar unnecessarily.
Dr. Aneke, the issue around doctors bulldozing patients.
Yeah, I want to this up.
Okay.
Doctors in private sector get much more less doing cesarean sections than normal delivery.
Okay. Well, let's hold it there because we have to unfortunately go for a commercial break. Now, is the C-section procedure as safe as it is often made out to be? That and more after the break. Don't go anywhere.
Mourning is when different people take different directions to different places for different reasons to do different things. Streets come alive. Evening is when people go home to their loved ones and turn to South Africa's most watched and trusted evening news. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Welcome to Network, a technology news program that also discusses what's trending in social media in and around Africa. MTN has launched its new movie and television streaming service, Front Row. If it's trending, we will find it. That's Network with me, Spumela Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on the SABC News channel.
Okay, so C-sections are regarded as having become a scourge for the African medical schemes. On the other hand, these are not without risks. In fact, a 2010 report by the WHO claimed that the procedure had reached epidemic proportions in many countries and raised the risk of maternal complications. Now, let's understand the impact and risks associated with this procedure from our guests here. But let's start with you, Dr. van Bennek, in terms of the financial impact that the cesarean sections are having.
Well, cesarean sections remain in the top 10 high cost hospital cost drivers for all schemes. So it's a worry. A Caesar in hospital costs about 25 to 30,000 rand, and a Caesar in the normal delivery costs about 50 to 20,000. to give you an example, if one of our schemes has about 500,000 members, in 2014 they spent 110 million rand on Caesars and 50 million rand on the normal vaginal deliveries. So you can see it can have a serious negative financial impact.
And in fact, the costs are not only associated with the mother, but with the baby as well, isn't that so?
Exactly.
All right, before we carry on, we have Craig on the line from Cape Town, I guess. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning.
Your comment or question, please.
Yeah, this question is not about cost. Why do women opt for cesarean rather than natural birth? Is it a pain option or is it for aesthetics?
Is that a question you're asking?
No, I'm asking, is it a pain option or is it just for the aesthetics, for looking good?
All right, let's put it through.
It's both, actually. You know, labor normally takes anything between 8 to 10 hours, and the contractions are quite painful. And women often hear stories when they go to the salon and all sorts of places about how painful labor is. So they have this perception that they were so painful, and some of them don't want to go through the pain. And some of the wrong perception that when you have a normal vaginal delivery, your vagina will open so badly that it might not come back to the normal texture again, and your husband might not enjoy having sexual intercourse with you. So this wrong perception that women have, that's why they normally opt for cesarean sections. But having said that, when they come to the door, we counsel them, allay their fears, and say, listen, you could have pain relief during the labor, and when you deliver, your vagina will come back to normal. But in some instances, after the counseling, they opt for normal vaginal delivery, and some women will opt for the Caesar. And as a doctor, you cannot give them what she wants. Yeah.
Dr. Mashamba, let's just take him up on this one, or rather, let me put this question through to you. You know, surely it is convenient for the doctor to conduct a C-section delivery. Isn't that so?
Yes.
So in the counseling process, I mean, number one, perhaps I'll ask this question, later on. But again, is it possible that the counseling can be objective in this instance, when in fact it's more convenient for the doctor to conduct the C-section rather than let the patient go through normal delivery?
Yeah. The expectation is that a health professional doctors should be ethical enough, and not being biased when counseling patients. But as he's indicating, there might be some patients who just have fear of vaginal delivery. In the public sector, we find those who need a Caesar refusing to have a cesarean section, and those who do not need a cesarean section requesting cesarean section. Right. And we are caught in such a situation. But I'm not expecting that doctors would just do a cesarean section for their own convenience.
Yeah.
But I think counseling, as indicated, is important.
So basically, for the sake of that caller, the issue around pain and aesthetics, these are myths generally. Okay, it's not true, and pain should never be an indication for cesarean section. I believe we have another caller on the line. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I had a baby last year, and I just felt like I wasn't counseled enough, because the doctor basically said you can deliver via C-section. I was so excited, but I didn't give it enough thought. Now I want to know if I can deliver the second time via the normal delivery, or now I'm stuck to delivering via C-section.
Well, how many? So you've only had one child through cesarean section?
I only have one child, and my gynae didn't give me enough counseling, and I was so excited. I just feel like he didn't counsel me enough. I don't think I had any problem because.
All right. Let's get Dr. Mashamba to answer you on this one. Dr. Mashamba, she's had one previous section, cesarean section. She wasn't counseled, which she's not happy about, and now she's got fears about her second delivery. Your advice to her?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the main thing to try and prevent a cesarean section is to make sure you don't have the first one. Because once a patient has a previous Caesar, we get scared that when she's in labor, if let's say she has experienced pain, she says, no, these pains are too much. She's a previous Caesar. We are scared that the uterus might rupture.
Yeah.
And the threshold, even in the public sector, if a patient is a previous Caesar, we tend to reduce that threshold to be low.
Yeah. But what about the notion of trial of SCAR, the so-called trial of SCAR?
There are indications or prerequisites that needs to be fulfilled before the trial of labor in a previous Caesar is performed. It must be one baby who is presenting with the head, and with in the Africans we say the estimated fetal weight should be at least less than 3.5, but in the Caucasians we use 3.7. So that needs to be fulfilled first before a patient could be allowed to have a trial of labor. Okay.
Let's talk about the risks associated with cesarean sections.
Well, cesarean section is an operation, and there's no single operation without risk. So you can have risk of anesthesia, you can have a cardiac arrest on the table, and for the Caesar per se, I mean, there's risk of excessive bleeding, which sometimes become catastrophic. And after the Caesar, if you are lucky and everything goes successful, you can develop infections, and you can have even your ureters also damaged in the process of the Caesar.
Okay. So in fact, there are serious risks associated with that.
We don't see them these days. We don't see them that often these days. But they are serious risks.
Let's take the last caller in this segment, Sebopela from Limpopo. Morning, Sebopela.
Morning, man. How are you?
Good. Your question or comment, please?
All right. My comment will be in relation to the previous caller who indicated that he was not properly advised or counseled before she could take him to the cesarean section.
Yeah.
I believe that Dr. Mashamba indicated the issue of ethics, particularly that the only problem that we have is that there are some C-sections that are definitely performed for persons to advance personal gains or hours of doctors and other medical practitioners. Because if you look at the combination of the component of the staff to the C-section as compared to the normal delivery, one could definitely say that if we are looking at the financial part that has already been indicated, the cost implications there are high. And then definitely say that there are some other individuals who are not doing their job ethically, or they're not doing it more than enough. I don't believe to say that it must be a choice of the mother as to deliver, whether by way of a normal delivery or a C-section. I think the mother must be advised, given the nature of the observations that are seen at the doctor, to say that we advise based on this and this and this. Because telling to say that it's a choice, really, it doesn't make sense to many of us, or many of our poor women who cannot make choices or who cannot be advised properly.
All right.
That would be my submission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. Very valuable points there. But I'm afraid now we have to go for a commercial break and try and answer the question. Is it possible to stop this ticking time bomb? Let's find out after the break. Please stay with us.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Your World makes it its business every evening to round up the leading local stories and international news to keep you informed all the time.
Make a date with Your World every evening for all the news headlines around the world to keep you abreast with knowledge.
Catch Your World for headlines across the world every Monday to Friday from 9 p.m, then Saturday and Sunday from 7 p.m.
So the question then is, what should be done to bring the rate of C-sections in South Africa down to more acceptable levels? We put this question to our guests. Now, before that question, let's just try and clarify one aspect. The caller, about 2 calls away, asked the question, is it pain or is it, money, the cost, all right? For the doctor, is it better for the doctor to conduct a cesarean section in terms of the earning potential or normal vaginal delivery?
Medical aid rate for cesarean section is much lower than for vaginal delivery. For a normal doctor in private practice, you'd rather have more of your patient delivery vaginally because you get more money if they deliver vaginally.
Yeah.
So the decision to do a Caesar is not too much about
the money part.
The money part that the doctor got to get. It's more
but the
about
convenience is still there, though.
Well, I won't run away from the fact that the convenience is still there, but that's not the primary reason. The primary reason is it should be done in the interest of the baby and the mother.
Okay. Let me put you on the spot there. What can we do in the private sector to bring this rate down to more acceptable levels? At least we all agree that the rate is unacceptably high, at least as compared to the rest of the world, isn't that so?
To be honest with you, the litigation is one of the driving reasons for the high cesarean section rate.
Right.
Because should the outcome be poor, lawyers will look into the dose of the patient and find only one small little evidence to indicate that you should have acted a bit early. You see, whilst in the public sector, you have the luxury to wait a little bit. Though things don't look well, you can wait a little bit because you have the resources of more doctors on board, more midwives on board. And some of these patients can live normally. But if in the private sector, where you're on your own, if there's this slightest indication that things might go wrong, you rather want to act early. And most of the time, things might go right, even with that small little indication that there's a risk. Things must still go well. But should they go wrong, then you are liable for high litigation rates. Yeah.
This is obviously a problem. I mean, perhaps the problem is, do we regard the normal birth procedure as a medical condition that needs to be supervised by a doctor? Because I think that's where the problem comes. Should doctors be there in the first place? Shouldn't midwives be the ones in the forefront?
I think midwives should be the ones in the forefront. Right. Because they are trained to look after pregnant women and they conduct delivery. Doctors come in when there's complication or there's a risk involved. Then doctors do come in. So midwives should be rather be in the forefront of looking after mothers and then doing the normal vaginal delivery.
Do midwives face the same legal suits as compared to the doctors?
Yes. If the outcome is poor, you are liable for medical suit.
Yeah. In the medical sector, what can we do to try and bring this rate down, Dr. van Benneker?
Well, I think midwife-led management of the birthing process is key in the low-risk pregnancies. They do have lower Caesar rates. But the problem is that there aren't enough midwives in South Africa and there's not enough midwife training. So that's something that the government needs to address. But I think that would be a key factor.
Yeah. Dr. Mashamba, your contribution, how can we bring, I know that you obviously are representing the Department of Health, you're talking from a public perspective that the rates there are not unacceptably high. But what do you think should be done to bring the general rate down?
The first thing is to try and avoid the first cesarean section.
Right.
Whatever, but with a better outcome. You mustn't reduce it to the detriment of the baby.
Right.
Because as my colleague has indicated here, anything that goes wrong, when the case is discussed, you are only asked, why didn't you do a Caesar? I think that's where the problem is. Now, it seems like a cesarean section is the only thing that could save you from not being litigated. If you do a cesarean section early and the outcome is poor, they say at least you tried. But if you haven't done it and the outcome is bad, they say that's where the problem is. Yeah. But all in all, the main important thing is, I think, to try and reduce the first cesarean section, if that is possible. She had indicated that I think we need to have not only enough midwives, but experienced midwives. and we can't get them unless they work with us for a longer time to get experience. The training of midwives per se, I think we used to have enough, but they left the nursing profession. They go to other things to try and not being litigated or other things. So I think the most important thing is just to make sure that we prevent the first cesarean section. Because as you had discussed before, I think there is also an issue with those complications of cesarean section, which is hemorrhage, which is leading to a significant number of maternal deaths.
What about on the patient side, though? I mean, there's lots of these misperceptions that the scar looks beautiful, that they're able to lie on the beach, and that they don't have to go through pain and what have you. How do we get the message out there that in fact there's risks, and that what they perceive as the easy way out actually isn't?
I think education plays a key role, and I think when patients come to our health facilities, I think we should take time and counsel them, because there are a lot of misperceptions out there.
All right.
So I think education will play a key role. And let me add this one before we go. I think if we look at the litigation and the amount being asked for during litigations, if it can be capped, then people will be more likely to wait a little bit, take a little bit more risk. But the litigation rate is so high, and the amount is too high. That's why
I think that's another show on its own. But before we close, let's take our last caller, very last caller for the show. That's Linda from Polokwane. Good morning, Linda.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you, ma'am? Your last question, please, or comment.
Okay, I just want to find out how is it that if one is HIV positive, the best way for delivering the baby is through cesarean?
Okay, excellent question. Thank you very much. Let's give it to Dr. Mashamba.
Yes. Being HIV positive is not an indication for cesarean section. You need to look at specifically the viral load. That if the viral load is low or undetectable, vaginal delivery is accepted. The other thing is that if the viral load is high, it might be advisable to have a cesarean section, but in the Department of Health, that is not an indication for Caesar, because the mother and the baby will be treated after, even after delivery. But in order to minimize cesarean sections, patients need to book early so that they get the treatment, so that by the time they deliver, they are expected to deliver, at least the viral load is undetectable.
Just your last comment, man, on this issue of litigation, because it seems to be a problem. Dr. Ajate, suggested that perhaps if the litigation rate can go down, how can that be possible?
Yeah, I usually go to Joburg High Court to try and see what are the things that could have gone wrong. And one of the important things, as he had indicated, is that they always say, if the Caesar was done, you would have prevented. Even in cases where I still feel that would not have been prevented. And it becomes a problem. But I think the way to go is to go at the route of the Australians who had kept the litigation down, to say they have a limit of the amount that should be paid for any maximum amount of money that could be paid for litigation.
I'm afraid we've run out of time. Dr. Anyete, Dr. von Bonneke, Dr. Mashamba, thank you very much for your contribution. Folks, that's all we have for you this week. And we'll come again next week to join us on SABC News. And remember that your views are extremely valuable to us. So please share these with us on our Facebook page, SABC Health Talk, and like our page, or follow us on Twitter at SABC Health Talk, or just drop us an email at healthtalk@sabc.co.za. We're back again next week, same time on SABC News. And remember that if you've missed any of the shows, you can watch repeat shows at 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. or get them from the YouTube link. So from myself, Dr. Salome Taung, and the rest of the crew here, it's a very warm goodbye. Thank you very much for watching the show, and please do take care.